Hi, I'm Janice Switlo. In the previous episode, I spoke about a lack of access to justice. And today I just want to take you back a little bit to discuss just how, in my own experience, on how restricted the profession of law is. And this is going back to the 1890s, which is when the acceptance of women in the legal profession was being strongly resisted, as it was for other professions like the medical professions. And I'm going to read you 4 stanzas from The Law and the Lady, a poem written in September 1892. I think all lawyers must agree on keeping our profession free from females whose admission would result in anything but good. Soon the invading female ranks will fill the warehouses and banks. The pulpit next, no doubt, will fall, and men will be driven to the wall. Oh, say my brethren, shall not then one refuge be reserved for men? One male monopoly where we can claim our old supremacy. One relic of that good old day when man held undisputed sway, and women knew no more than crave to be some husband's toy or slave. When I entered the legal profession I was called to the bar in 1986 or 87. 87. And I articled for a very large, reputable law firm in Vancouver. And I was shocked that we were still in these kinds of times. There's all sorts of testing of your character in terms of whether you can fit in with the law firm's, toughness, if you will. So the male articled students, they would be brought in and critiqued on their memos that they had prepared, their legal work. The females of the same articling year as myself would be called in, and the discussion would be about how they dressed, what their hair looked like, how their makeup was, or the fact they did not wear makeup and ought to, what kind of shoes they wore. No discussion. And these are brilliant women. I won't speak of myself right now, but these are brilliant women that I knew that were doing exceptional work. And yeah, they weren't great extroverts, and they weren't high fashion models. They had incredible brains, and they knew their work, and they knew the law, and they knew how to work the law. But that wasn't recognized because they just didn't look like what women in a law firm should look like. Appreciating these times, there were TV shows on too, a very glamorous look of female lawyers, etc. And it was really sad because there were female lawyers in this firm who were on the verge or getting close to the verge of becoming partners. And they were putting off and keeping secret any relationships they had. They were not having babies because that would prevent them from becoming partners. And it was like 3 examples where women became partners and very soon after became pregnant. Now the partners weren't happy about that, but there was nothing they could do at that point because they had already made partner. So, this is the late 80s, okay? This is not that long ago. With myself, I had one instance where I wore a Chanel jacket in houndstooth, black and white houndstooth. Not large houndstooth, but, small houndstooth. It wasn't your basic blue or black, however, with at the time the bow tie shirt. And I was called in and it was questioned, what are you wearing? And so I was, very proud. This was a very expensive jacket. It was, high fashion, but conservative. And I told him what I was wearing. And he really couldn't argue much with that. And I said, was there a purpose for our meeting, in terms of our, my legal work? And there really wasn't much more to say. He was pretty clear that I wasn't about to sit there and take a lot of that kind of stuff. Again, the testing I got from, senior lawyers, being basically called a prostitute, being the kind of innuendo, the kind of discussion, the sorts of things that were said in your presence, nothing in law school prepared me for that. And it's the kind of thing that still haunts in a way, because you really didn't know how to respond or what to do. I did it at a later date. There was a survey of female lawyers that the Law Society of BC conducted, and I shared with them all that I had been through and in the course of my career. So what's the point of me sharing this? My point is that attitude of us being a white male supremacy stronghold continues. And so if you can imagine, if women generally are not well accepted, except in maybe family law in certain areas, but certainly not in the corporate boardrooms that was my focus of interest, given my Bachelor of Commerce undergraduate degree, is that, if you have now an ethnicity, my advantage, I was white, right? White privilege. If you have an ethnicity on top of that, if you have Indigenous nationals who have been permitted to sidestep the normal qualification process to be admitted to law school, these graduates are not getting placed in large law firms where they'll be exposed to the big corporate work. Why is that important? Because it's these lawyers that dictate what's going on in Canada in terms of developments, for example. And it's these lawyers that Indigenous nationals do not have access to. They have access to people who are doing their best with what they've been taught and what they've been able to learn, but the fact is their learning has been given the short shift. You learn the practice of law under senior lawyers. You learn it by jumping in and doing it under their watchful eye. And there's so much that you learn from especially a large law firm that caters to big corporate entities and governments that you just can't ever expect to learn anywhere else. So here's our basic problem. Not only is there a lack of access to justice, generally speaking, but the lawyers that are willing to, if they are willing to do work to help protect Indigenous nationals, are not of the caliber and have not had the experience to go up against these kind of corporate brains. And I've had the great advantage of not only learning how to think as they do from watching the example, but also I've been a Crown lawyer, so I've also had that added advantage in terms of how to look at a situation, how situations are manipulated, if you will, to benefit the position that's desired and the outcome that's searched for. So, until such time as Indigenous nationals can develop this expertise, an expertise that needs to understand how big business works, needs to understand the agendas, and has advisors who also know about Indigenous nations, about Indigenous nationals, how to preserve and protect that, how to dish it back, how to correct the misrepresentations that can often be at the table. When you don't know, it's really hard to respond back. And this is the problem we have. We have all these initiatives coming forward, and it comes with money, looks good. The advisors say, yeah, because they don't know what else to do, right? So this is our situation. We need to get through this stage. We need to get ready for the next stage. And while that's happening and building that expertise and that core expertise that will protect the whole of the nation, not just individual communities, that core where individual communities can come forward and say, we need help, right? Here's what's happening. And the nation as a whole can start to look after all of its parts. While that's happening, we also have incredible people doing incredible work with children and youth, and understanding how they're being raised and what they're being exposed to and how they're being primed and how they're still being oppressed as a result of a legacy of residential school system that has taught parents to act a certain way, like nuns and priests did, who don't have children, right? So getting back to how to raise a confident, responsible child into a productive member of the nation. These are two critical components to moving forward and guaranteeing a future. And that's all I have to say.